Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another episode of the Speakers Gallery. Our guest today is Professor Herman Manyora. Professor Herman Manyora is a professor of linguistics and communication at the University of Nairobi. He is also a very popular and much sought after analyst on politics and regional matters. Professor Herman Manyora, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes.
Prof,
Yes.
the topical issue in the country right now,
BBI.
BBI.
Correct.
Everybody is talking about BBI.
Correct.
Even mothers out in the rural areas,
Yes.
tending their camels,
Yes.
tending their own maize and potatoes and
Yes.
onions.
Correct.
BBI. Where are we on BBI? Have we reached our expectations? What is the content? The child has been delivered now. For a long time, we're waiting for the child, whether it be a boy or a son, a son or a daughter.
Yes.
But now the child is there. So tell me.
The child is still with the midwives.
Uh-huh.
The mother is still on the labor ward. The child will be delivered later.
Okay.
Yeah, to the mother to
Yes.
pay close attention
Yes.
to certain features,
Yes.
and for the mother-in-law to see whether really the child belongs to the son.
Whether the child looks,
looking at the
whether
ears,
the child looks
the
like
nose.
the father.
Yes.
Whether
when
whether
you
BBI
go on the
looks
calendar,
Yes.
all the women don't go to the calendar.
Yes.
They look at the ears, the nose,
Yes.
the other features. They
Yes.
say, this is for Farmer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Proceed.
Correct. But I think before we even say whether we have a baby or something like that, we must begin by appreciating that this is a game changer.
A game
This
changer.
BBI will fundamentally alter the politics of this country, and of course, ultimately even the economics. So Kenya will be changed very significantly for a long time to come because of this BBI, because of the handshake of the 9th of March 2018. It's just that 9th of March was not just another day. That handshake was just not another handshake. I believe it will alter the politics of this country.
Fundamentally.
Fundamentally, yeah. And therefore, that is the context from which we must observe BBI. And when you look at BBI, the report itself, and you see people reacting on the basis of the report, I think it is premature. First of all, the division as to whether it should go parliamentary or the
presidential.
popular way through the people is again very premature. If you ask me, extremely premature. Yeah. Because even if you look at the report, assuming this is the report, this is the final report, and that what we are going to look at is what is in the BBI report, then it is not conclusive as to whether we will have a referendum or not. It's not conclusive because lawyers are divided. Each lawyer says it is clear there's nothing in this report that calls for a referendum. Equally, there are good lawyers who say this is going to a referendum. I watched yesterday on some TV show. None other than James Orengo and Mother Karua. These are top lawyers, top politicians, and they were differing on the issue of BBI. That tells you, even if this was the report, the final report, there's still a lot of differences, and you cannot be. But what I do know is that once the BBI report itself has gone to through the next phase, that's when we shall have the report. And at that time, I don't think it will be in doubt as to whether or not we'll have a referendum. Because if you read the report on page 98, it is pushing this same report to a next level of consultations. So what comes out of that?
Which can be both the people, or it could also be parliament.
I doubt it can be parliament.
Mm-hmm.
I think already there's the views are divided, opinions divided. But after the next phase, I don't think there'll be any debate. It'll be obvious, because certainly you are going to touch on the structure of the executive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think you can have a premier as presented in this report now. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And many other things.
The areas that was close to the hearts of Kenyans is one, to change the power structure with a view to having a ceremonial president and having an executive prime minister. and having a number of deputy prime ministers, 2, 1. The idea is to have power vested in somebody who is accountable to Kenyans. The president is not now accountable to Kenyans. It's an imperial president. Sits there in the White House, and basically there's no way. There's no constitutional, legal way in which you can hold him accountable. Prime Minister has got to come to the floor of the House to defend the actions or inactions of his own government. We never got that one right now. It's very hazy on that. You are looking at a prime minister who is appointed by the president and basically making the president even more powerful and more imperial.
Yeah, it's true.
Secondly,
it's true, yeah.
we were sick and tired
Yes.
of this bloated government. A government in which you have over 400 legislators for a population that has only turned 47 million now. 47 million now. That was about 43 million.
It allows the GDP.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a GDP of 70, just about $70 billion. In America, a country of 400 million people with a GDP of $18 trillion. $18 trillion.
With California alone.
With California alone having what do you call an economy bigger than Africa,
Yes.
the whole of Africa put together. And it has 535 legislators, 435 House of Representative members,
Yes.
and 100 senators.
Senators, yeah.
And we have over 400. Expensive. We expected that to be rationalized. We have a lot of commissions. A big drain also on the treasury. We have 47 county governments, devolved units.
Yes, yes, yes.
America with a size of about the size of Africa's less than almost, but less than Africa, but big enough.
With just 50 or so.
It has only 50 states.
Yes.
We were looking at rationalization
Yeah.
of all those things. It has not happened.
That's why I've told you, people who are discussing this report, I think it's premature. Because the things that people were talking about, the issues Kenyans were conversing, the issues that really were at the heart. You remember when we went for the constitutional review process that yielded the constitution of 2010?
2010, yes.
There are issues that were so clear.
Yes.
A good number of them were handled in the current constitution,
Yeah.
though not conclusive.
Yes.
But in this time, like you said, it was about the structure of government, the cost of government, and the things related to that, none of which was attended to. The MPs remained as many as they were.
With the Senate that is only there in name.
The
Only
constitutional
in name.
bodies being there,
Yes.
duplicating things, allowing the executive to muzzle them, and yet consuming resources. The structure of the executive remained the same, with an even more imperial president. So that leads me to believe this is not the report. That in the next phase we shall now get the report.
So this, according to you, is the beginning of the
Yes,
of a conversation.
it was put in such a way that it would invite debate.
Why do you say this is going to change fundamentally this country?
Because-
Because when we had the 2010 constitution, we said this is phenomenal. It's going to change this country for posterity, fundamentally change this country for posterity. When we got the IPPG,
Yes, the same.
the same. When every time we are up to something, when we got the coalition government of 2008, we said we were going to change this country forever.
Yes, yes.
You see what I mean? The future of this country, we might have come through some hard experiences and history, but sometimes it is worth the price.
Yes, yes.
The country will be better for good. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, this question
we-
has been raised by many people.
Yes.
We have the Constitution, we have many reports, Kriegler report, TJRC, Ndongo report, John, many reports, none of them. And they are very, very, very serious recommendations.
Absolutely.
The answer is simple. You see, let's take, for example, all these reports. They depend on the goodwill of those in power to implement. So long as those in power are not willing to implement the TGRC and other, they will not be implemented. And basically it's because commissions are set to cool the tempers, the temperatures. When things are hot, establish a commission, people keep quiet, they ventilate, then the report is shelved. A constitution is a smoke screen. A constitution is a document that makes the led to believe there is government that is working for them, and that it will work according to certain dictates and arrangements. So that's why, unless again it has good implementers, it may not go far. Now, why is the BBI different? Why is the handshake different? The BBI, according to me, is a political infrastructure to achieve a certain goal. And so long as Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga remain committed to what I think they wanted to do, the BBI will be the infrastructure they need to do it, and therefore it will work. That explains why they must mind and care who becomes president in 2022. Because the kind of fundamental things they want to bring on board cannot be executed unless at least one of them is in power, but ideally both of them in power. So BBI will work because it is something that Uhuru and Raila want to use to change something fundamental in this country. And if you care, I will tell you. If you don't care, I will tell you. If you don't mind. You see,
Proceed.
There are certain things we scatter around in this country. Nations that come face to face with those things that affect them and don't shy away always will progress. This country is defined by one major problem. The problem of a community that feels betrayed and persecuted, and the other community that feels entitled. So unless you address that fundamental problem, anything else in this country will never work. I believe watching and listening and reading the statement that these guys issued after the handshake, I've read it and reread it. I have followed it. I have come to the conclusion it is that bit they want to address. Because once you address that, betrayal and entitlement, this country will move forward. And BBI is that infrastructure that allow them to do that. And therefore, when the real BBI report comes out,
how will that solve the problems of this country? Because people in this country have suffered much more than that community that you claim has been betrayed.
Correct.
The North has suffered more than Luo Nyanza.
Yes.
The East has suffered, part of the East, particularly the Lower East, has suffered big time. The West has never been any better than Luo Nyanza.
The suffering.
Now when you're the Turkanas up there have been suffering, and they still suffer the scourges of starvation. They cannot get food. They die of hunger and starvation. When there's a government that's ideally supposed to make sure that there's an element of food security. Okay. The entitlement as well as the betrayal comes out of the original politics we had in the country.
Yes.
The very first time when we were getting independence, there was the issue of the big tribes and the small tribes.
Yeah.
The big tribes were the Kikuyus and the Luos.
Yeah.
And the small tribes were all the others headed by the Luyas.
Masinda Muliro,
Ngala, Moi, all of them.
Yeah.
And in that election, the small tribes lost. Every time there's a discussion on cohesion coming together, you realize Raila has one catchword: the founding fathers of this country.
Yes.
He only has two people in mind, by the way.
Yes.
Kenyatta.
and that's what I'm telling you.
And Jaramogi.
If you sort out that problem.
Hang on a minute, let me tell you. And Jaramogi.
Yes.
What is going to stop these other ones right now seriously ganging up together and saying, we have been betrayed all this time? Right now, it's like, if I can get the Luos on board, and the Luos and the Kikuyus can have a certain harmony, then Eureka.
Yes.
The problems are solved. You have the solution to Kenya's future. But that's not the case. It's not as easy as that. And we have seen it right now since the handshake. All the appointments that were made outside the mountain region were literally in Luo Nyanza.
Yes.
The feeling of betrayal on the part of all the other communities is profound today as we talk. So How do you say, how then under those circumstances do you narrow down this thing to only the betrayal and the entitlement? And if those two can be then more or less harmonized, and those two can be negotiated, you know, there is a rapport between the two, then you have no problem in the country.
I'll take you 2002, 2003.
Yes.
Where there is Raila and his team joining Kibaki and Ngilu and Wamalu, and then the rainbow happens, and you are part of it, I'm sure.
Yes.
And Kanu is chased out of power. I don't believe it was chased. A book of mine is coming out.
Yes.
Maybe next year or something, which I will show. Those were games put in place by Moi and Kenyatta and so on and so forth. To understand what I'm talking about is, if Kibaki had not betrayed Raila,
yes,
something just as simple as that, as straightforward as that, honor the MOU and perhaps have an arrangement in which Raila succeeds Kibaki, which would be a very natural succession. I hope you will agree with me that Kenya would not have been the same again thereafter. I think what we call tribe and tribalism, negative ethnicity, call it what you want to call it, I don't think that would be the case today. Honoring that MOU alone would have dealt tribalism a mortal blow.
Which was never done.
Which was never done. And that's what I'm saying.
The handlers of Kibaki and Kibaki himself and the kitchen cabinet.
Yes.
And basically, as soon as they were in office, it was back to business as usual. State capture.
So, the idea of Raila and Uhuru working together is to dismantle exactly what you have said. State capture. That you will have dealt with the deep state in a very, very fundamental way. They will be overwhelmed. The moment you allow the deep structure to exit the scene,
to be dismantled,
peacefully, operate minimally from some corner there, because every country has its own deep state, you will have fixed the politics of this country. And the moment you fix the politics of this country, Bwana Speaker, you are then saying the economy will fall in place. Siasa mbaya, Moi told us, maisha mbaya. At that time it sounded just the ranting of an old man. But it is quite true.
It has been around a little bit too long.
It's quite true that once you fix your politics, a lot of good things will follow automatically.
In the economy.
Including even investment. Once we have predictable political situation in this country, once the businessmen are able to assess the sovereign risk and say this is a good place, once we are rated well, we are talking about serious investment flowing into this country. But we are also talking about people having confidence in their own country. The lack of confidence in this country is destroying this country. It's made even worse, like you've just said, when the good jobs of this country are just handed to one or two communities. It erodes the confidence Kenyans need to have in their own country for the country to move forward. So I'm saying, if they fix this political problem, I can see a situation where in the next 10 or so years, elections in this country are free and fair, and anybody, including Alendile, will be able to ascend to the highest office in this country. So that's the context in which I understand the BBI.
The school of thought holds that Uhuru has absolutely no interest to bring any fundamental changes in this country. And basically, what was the interest is that if those demonstrations in Nairobi continued for a few more weeks, the economy of the country was going to completely ground to a halt.
And it would be difficult for him to rule.
It would be difficult for him to rule. And more than even that, he comes from the richest business family in the country.
The Rothschild of this country.
The Rothschilds of this country. And that was going to suffer massive losses. You can imagine the shilling losing against the dollar. Capital flight out of the country. Overnight, you're getting closer to Zimbabwe. And all your wealth will just dissipate. It will just...
So in other words, you are saying what many people have said.
And the idea,
selfish angle to hold
the idea was to arrest that. And then have another for lack of a better word, have another merry-go-round. That basically a run-around where you never catch anything.
Merry-go-round.
Yeah, or even a run-around. And
you see,
so is that the case? Because right now we have a document that is too much ado about nothing.
You see, when people come up with something like that, you would always interpret it in. You can't interpret it in one way. You and I, our intellectual level can't even allow us to do that.
Yes, we have to look at it extensively.
Yeah. So I think one way of looking at it is with that what you are saying from the selfish angle.
Yes.
Selfish self-preservation in terms of he's able to finish his term comfortably. Selfish in terms that he's able to protect the interests of the family, because if things go the way they were going and business collapses, they will suffer the most. I would dare say even more than that. Selfish to stay long enough in power for the family to become a real Rothschild in this country. You get it? To really be the family you will have to go to. The family you will have to go to, even if you want to be president.
Dominate every sector of the
They
economy.
need another 10 years or so to complete it.
Yes.
That you can be in State House, they don't care. You'll need to go to them. That is the selfish aspect of it. But even if we were to remain with the selfish aspect of it, you'll see that there are always byproducts, even than intended.
Consequences.
Yeah, or even benefits. So you could say, even if Uhuru and Raila were in this thing for very selfish reasons, some trickle down in terms of benefit to Kenyans would be there. Because for them to achieve that, they will need peace. Kenyans will benefit from the peace and so on and so forth. They will need to come up with an architecture that works in such a way that after 2022, things are working in the country much as they enjoy.
Yeah.
But also, we can also flip the thing. We can turn the coin and say, how if it is true they intend good for this country? It is possible. And I've argued it is possible that they want to address the ills of this country, which they said they traced their fathers. And it's only the two who can address, like I've said. So it is possible Uhuru and Raila are serious and they want to change this country. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
Serious and want to change the country.
Yes, for the better.
And
Let's give them
they
the
become
benefit.
the agents of change.
It's possible.
They become the executioners of change.
Yes.
Executors of change.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
And the idea is, for example, for one of them to come back as a ceremonial president.
Yes.
And the other one as a prime minister.
But while you are this idea of ceremonial president,
Yes.
speaker, and prime minister, I have argued, and I was talking to Anyang Nyong
Yes.
a week before he launched his book on the same, presidential or parliamentary. I have argued with them, and I've told them, you see, Kenyans are not known for the rigors of thought. They are not known for engaging painfully. Thinking.
They're lazy.
We are lazy. We like the lazy approach.
Yes,
so we say,
yes.
from presidential system
to parliamentary.
That is lazy.
We are now looking at integrating building bridges initiative.
Yes.
You noticed how the deputy president was humiliated.
Badly. And I didn't like it.
Is that building bridges? I don't care for him, for your information. For all I care, I wouldn't want to see him in office for certain reasons. I'm now out of parliament because of him and the people around him. They rigged the elections last time.
Yes.
And they rigged for the whole of Northeastern Province.
Yeah.
So we have our own issues to pick with him. But for God's sake,
He was the deputy
he
president.
is the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. Do you have to humiliate him the manner which is being humiliated now?
Have you thought about it this way? Like everybody else, I didn't like it. It played out very badly. But I step back and look at it now critically. Have you thought about this way? Supposing they knew they wanted to run the show, how difficult would it have been for Uhuru Kenyatta to send Ruto out of the country on some engagement?
Easy.
Easy.
To
So
represent him.
why didn't he do that?
To represent him in
Something.
No. To represent him in was it Addis Ababa where the IGAD
things are all over the world. Things are happening.
where we were represented in the IGAD summit of the heads of states by Monica Juma.
Yes, he could have gone.
He could have gone there.
Yeah, and many other places.
Yes.
Have you thought about it? That then should get you thinking that this must have been deliberate. And I think When Raila and
Prof,
Uhuru...
Prof,
Yes,
I
yes.
want you to hold on to your thoughts. We're
Yes.
going to have a short commercial break and shall be right back. Viewers, welcome back to the Speaker's Gallery. Our guest, for those of you who are joining us now, is Professor Herman Manyora. He doesn't need introduction. This is a man who has been on the TV sets in this country from one station to the other, from one media house to the other, for a number of years, a good number of years now, and an accomplished professor of linguistics and communication. Welcome back. I stopped you when we were talking about the humiliation that was visited upon our Deputy President, William Ruto.
Yeah, and I was saying, it does appear to me that it was deliberate. And then you must now look for the reason. And the reason I suspect is when the handshake happened, of course the intention is to get Ruto out of the way. I think it's now clear.
Yes.
He's not part of the deal.
Yes.
He's not part of the deal. What I think is happening is this, that these people had underestimated William Samoei Ruto. They didn't know what they were going to go against.
Yes.
They thought once they do the handshake and one or two things happen, he will look and he will be
Allegiance
vanquished,
will shift like...
and quickly everybody will go to the BBI,
yes,
to the
yes,
handshake
yes,
BBI
yes.
side. Ruto will be isolated. He will see sense in joining these people. They underestimated the
and
guy.
become a choir boy.
badly.
Yes.
So now they are resorting to very direct punches. Gloves are off,
Bare knuckle.
bare knuckle.
See, I did not want to ask my driver to come out of the parking.
Yes.
You know, it's difficult to get parking in town.
Yes.
So I took a taxi in Intercontinental Hotel.
Yes.
Kalenjin young man was driving those taxis.
Yes.
And we engaged in conversation while we were together.
Yes.
And he said, we don't want to stay out in the cold.
Uh-huh.
It is now abundantly clear to us
That we are going
that
nowhere.
Uhuru does not want Ruto,
Yes.
and without
Uhuru's
Uhuru's support, he can get nowhere. Our prayers is he's playing games also on Raila, and maybe he has at the back of his mind Gideon Moi.
That must have been a Baringo man. I meet them.
No, from Kericho.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he said, if he says Gideon,
Yeah.
we will all rally behind Gideon. We will all abandon Ruto, in a matter of, days, and everybody's going to rally behind Ruto, Gideon.
Even if it is a by the way speaker, let me tell you.
Yes.
this. I think I know this country well enough.
Yes.
Even if it is by the way, let me tell you this.
Yes.
Gideon is not far from the power of this country.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
If you write him off,
Yes.
then you don't know.
You dig it at your own peril.
Yes. This guy is not far. He's just there. He will not be presented to you in a significant manner in 2022.
Yes.
But give it another 5 years.
Yes.
Oh,
He will be there.
you know, he's a true Kalenjin. And it surprises me that Gideon is a true Kalenjin.
Yes.
Compared to Ruto,
Yes.
Gideon is more Kalenjin.
Yes.
Because they have always said
Yes.
that Gideon is not even a Kalenjin. He doesn't even speak the language. He speaks that funny St. Mary's accent. He doesn't relate with people like Ruto. But when it comes to flagging out a Kalenjin, I can
Yes.
flag Gideon. One thing about the Kalenjin,
Yes.
they,
Yes.
they speak very little.
Yes.
They say very little.
Yes.
Very observant.
And they have the powerful patience.
Patience, like a vulture.
Absolutely.
Yes. So his friends tell me this. I haven't talked to the guy.
And there's a quid pro
Very
quo, by the way.
close. Very close.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
This has become now the catchword because of the Trump,
Yeah.
the Trump Ukrainian thing.
Yes.
I mean, there's a payback
Yeah.
for what Moi did on bringing
Yeah.
Uhuru from literally,
What
and turning him into the consummate
what people
politician
close to
is.
him
Yes.
tell me is that if Gideon was going to buy you lunch, if you ask him his plan about the presidency, if you ask once, you'll still have lunch. Maybe not very good lunch, but
Yes.
you'll have lunch.
Yes.
If you ask it the second time,
Yes.
then that lunch is gone.
Yes.
Because the first time you ask to Liabana, things will come at the right time.
Yes.
And that is, don't engage him again. If you attempt,
Yes.
and that to me is a challenge.
Yes.
So he knows what is the game that is being played.
National cohesion.
Yeah. Yes.
Are we any closer to that cohesion that we've always talked about?
You know that
Is the nation cohesive?
that's the elephant in the room. They say
With the tribal politics that's still there?
the absence of war the mere absence of war is
It's not peace.
It's not peace. They also talk of peace that may be a lull. But let's celebrate
Before the real storm.
Let's celebrate what we have.
Yeah.
We are peaceful. Politicians are making noise, and I want to try to think that's their work. If they don't make noise, then they are not relevant, and they should go home and join the rest of us. And also, let's also admit that, like Uhuru Kenyatta said, Kenyans are able to intermingle in a manner that was not feasible 2017, 2018, January, before the handshake. He gave the example of Kibera. And it is true. Only last weekend, the Murukumens and the rest of these guys were in Siaya or something like that. You see, and they are well received, and they are, much as they are hitting at Raila, but they are received. So there is evidence that we are
getting more homogeneous.
Yeah. And I think it is up to Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga to finish the work.
Yes,
through BBI.
they say that this census right now is fully doctored.
The census is not doctored. The census is a joke.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
They just decided what to put numbers where.
I think it's a joke.
And basically sit back.
There's a time Mwai Kibaki was almost rigged out of.
Yes.
You are there.
Yes.
Out of.
His MP.
His position as an MP.
Yes.
He said, the famous saying that
Yes.
even rigging requires some intelligence.
Yes.
So when you want to do things, you
Yes.
require some intelligence.
Yes.
You cannot tell me a constituency,
Yes.
perhaps of 60,000 people,
Yes.
10 years later can only have 60,500.
Or can have 30,000
Or
or
have,
40,000.
those are
Yes.
those are really absurd situations.
A constituency in our
Yeah.
case which has
Yes.
got 28,000 voters,
Yes.
and it had 16,000 students,
Yes.
pupils in there
Yes.
going through school, and then you say it has a population of 30,000. Tell me, Agenda 4.
Is it Agenda 4 or the 4 agenda?
The 4 agenda.
We had Agenda 4, by the way, which we abandoned.
Yes.
At the Serena, once we did the other agenda that are political power and the institutions,
Yes.
we have forgot Agenda 4,
Yes.
which was now touching
Yes.
on the things that ail this country.
Absolutely.
Unemployment,
Yeah.
Historical injustice,
Yeah.
and so many of those things that really, unless we address,
Yes.
we will never move forward as a country. We could do the politics right,
Yeah.
but we need to address those things.
Which we have not addressed.
When you have an army of unemployed
Yes.
people,
You're trading on
Yes,
a dangerous, on a very
when
dangerous.
you have those figures of unemployment,
Yes.
and when you are making the situation worse by the day
Yes.
through dumping
Yes.
and everything that is
Yes.
affecting the
Yes.
industries and
Yes.
what,
Yes.
when you have Kenyans going to bed hungry,
Yes.
and they are not 10%, they are in
Yeah.
the region of 50% of the
Yeah.
nation,
Yeah.
then you are doing well. You're not doing, that's the Agenda 4. But
Yeah.
the 4 agenda, honestly,
Yeah.
if you ask me, I think I have never understood none of them really make sense to me. I've tried to interrogate them.
What are they for? Industrialization,
Industrialization.
housing.
You cannot, let's say industrialization. Look, you cannot unleash Chinese on Kenyans
and say
and then talk about industrialization. So let's forget about that
Yes.
one. So that way.
housing.
Housing is a scheme for people to make money. There is no point of government doing housing. Even
Private
when the
sector.
government gets it right, like in Angola,
Yes.
they may end up being even too many.
Yes.
They cannot even be
Yes.
absorbed by the economy.
Yes.
What we need to do is to address simple things like what happens in a municipality or a
Yes.
town.
Yes.
Land is never for sale.
Yes.
The moment you allow people to buy land and hold land for speculation, then the cost of housing will be prohibitive.
Yes.
Only few people will enter development.
Yes.
But you and I, if we are told, go to Kayole, government has allocated you land and given you for 8 months to put up a simple structure
Yeah.
that Kenyans can rent 2-bedroom and pay
Basically,
8,000.
The plans.
You
have
and
got
I,
to be
we are not.
approved.
Me, I'm not rich. Maybe you are
Yes,
rich.
yes.
But I can try and get a small loan and do it.
Yes.
But I must reckon with buying land at millions of shillings. So government is pretending. Government should avail land as it is done. Do you know houses relatively are cheaper in New York than Nairobi, for example?
Oh, yes.
So what does that tell you?
Oh yes.
So
Oh,
how
yes.
can government?
I was in New York, in One time, I've been a number of times later also, but one time in 2008.
Yes.
And a palace, basically, what you call
Yes.
the houses they have up there,
Yes.
a castle-like house
Yeah.
on a 20-acre
Yes.
in upstate New York,
Yes.
was going for a couple of $100,000. And that was what basically a flat in the leafy parts of Nairobi was selling for that time.
The most dramatic example.
Where you can keep your horses and everything in there.
The most dramatic example would be the one of the Tokyo embassy.
Yes.
Aside, forget about the scandal.
Yes.
You know, Duge,
Yes.
there was Duge, there was Wetangula.
Yeah.
Forget about the scandal.
Yes, yes,
What shocked me, and I think many other Kenyans,
Yes.
was the cost of that embassy.
yes,
Much as you are saying it was exaggerated,
yes.
an embassy house in Tokyo at that amount, I don't remember the amount of money, but you can Google. I was left wondering, what? You mean you can get something as cheap as this in Tokyo?
Oh yes, oh yes.
So,
Oh, yes.
government is not serious about Big Four. Government should get land, allocate people land. Look, as I talk to you now, government is buying land or leasing or buying Integrity Center when just next door a lease has expired and the crooks in Ministry of Land and elsewhere are renewing those leases
To sell.
or selling them.
Yes.
And the government is buying a house next door there. So there is, so really the government is not serious. You go to health as another one of those four agenda.
Yeah, this is health, universal.
They are talking about, government talks about pumping billions of shillings. They did some what do you call it? When you are starting some pilots in, I think it was Kisumu, Nyeri, I think Garissa, and one other. It failed badly. Yet in the current supplementary budget, there are billions of shillings for the same. Now they want to roll out universally. When it failed at the pilot stage, you want to spend billions to sponsor people, to pump in NHIF, which you and I know is a cash cow.
Yeah.
Now, what will be the best approach to health in this country, if you are serious? We inherited infrastructure by way of King George Hospital, Kenyatta National Hospital, Mathare Mental Hospital, spinal cord injury, I think, and then the provincial hospitals,
All of them.
district hospitals,
Coast General Hospital.
sub-district, they were in Nyambene, Vihiga, where they were Nyamira, they were sub-districts, and then health centers in almost all locations in most part of this country, and dispensaries. And then Moi came up and did Nyayos and a few other things. What do you need in this country? To continue training, offer good training to health personnel, pay them well, mind their welfare, equip the hospitals, and let Kenyans go in. There are many places in this world where if you open your clinic, nobody can come in, including third world countries like Namibia, poor countries. If you open your clinic, who would come in? Government hospital has everything. So those
The
billions.
same thing with the education sector.
Yeah. If you improve, I was reading about Rwanda now. All private schools are closing. Why?
The government schools are doing very well.
So any of these things Uhuru is talking about by the four agenda, it's just nothing. None of them is serious.
Finally,
Yeah.
regional peace, regional integration.
Okay.
Where are we?
First, we must begin by saying, no man is safe until his neighbor is safe. We live in a world where really there are things that affect one person affect all of us. Terrorism is global. Whether you are hit today or not, you are never
there.
safe.
It's
So we
there.
must deal with it.
Yes.
From a political point of view, Kenya is in a very strategic place. And first, Kenya itself must be a major player. And I like the way we have been engaging of late. Not surrendering peace in Africa, the Horn of Africa especially, and the IGAD areas, not surrendering it to Americans and Europeans and the rest of these people. We are now engaged in ourselves. So that is a plus on our leaders through IGAD and other.
And AMISOM and the rest.
Yeah, and so on. AMISOM, good examples, which is an offshoot of IGAD. So that is good. Mistrust among nations in East and Central Africa, East Africa and the whole, is beginning to lessen a bit. You remember the Sudan question was always complicated because of Museveni. People talked a bit about Uhuru and so on. But that's becoming less.
Yeah.
So it's good for the region.
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia internally.
New dispensation.
Apart from their own issues internally, Abiy is doing well. You remember now with Djibouti and the other neighbors. A little complain about
our competition with
Kenyans
Ethiopia
and Ethiopians
yes.
interfering with Somalia,
Yes.
Jubaland, Puntland,
Yes.
and Somalia,
Yeah.
Somaliland. But overall, if you ask me, overall we are doing better than we've done before. Majorly because we are beginning to appreciate the power we have to handle our own issues as Africans and people in this region. That to me is what is important, that we can do it ourselves.
But we are undermining the center in Mogadishu.
Yes.
Ethiopia is trying to strengthen
That's what I've
the
said.
center.
Kenya,
Yes.
a bit of Kenya and
Ethiopia is
Jubaland,
trying to strengthen the
Ethiopia.
center.
That's not good.
Yes.
And I cannot even leave this before I talk about the oil problem.
Yes.
And the resources, the things for which Kenya and Somalia want to fight. And this is, to me, is the instigation of foreigners. The resources there, we can't even exhaust in 100 years, even if we shared.
The presence of the
The fish alone,
yes.
the fish in that area, I think is tuna fish, the leading in the world. We can't even exhaust. As we fight, foreigners want to come and take this fish like the Chinese were doing.
Yes.
As we fight, even if Somalia were to give the oil blocks, they are giving it for a song to be exploited by other people. Why can't we in this region, Kenya and Somalia, say, well, as we sort out this issue, let's see how we can exploit what God has given us. That to me is better. And that is not possible when, as you are saying, there's internal, the interference by Kenya and maybe Ethiopia
Gulf
in the issues of, and the special Arab states. Yeah?
Yes, yes.
And we know it. The tragedy is that we know and we allow it.
Yes.
We know Arab states, the Gulf states, that want to mess.
They don't want that thing to come off the ground.
Yes, we know it. And then we are playing along.
Off the shelf.
Yeah.
The sea shelf, yeah.
I think the beginning point, if you ask me,
Yes.
if somebody were listening to me,
Yes.
the beginning point would be for Kenya and Somalia to know this was given to them by God, their creator. For them to enjoy and their children and future generations. And they don't have the capacity to exploit it in the next 100 years. They can bring in partners, the two of them, and find ways of
when
doing
we
it.
interfere in the internal affairs of Somalia right now and support the regional government and try and get these clans against one another because some are amenable to our own interests in the region according to us and others are against. And we even go to the extent of inviting a liberation movement in Ethiopia that was initially had its ideological base as secession from Ethiopia. Don't you think we are playing a very dangerous game? Because if you interfere in the internal affairs of one country, then they in turn come and interfere in your own internal affairs. It can be very costly to us. We have an Oromo president in the country. We have 3 districts that are Oromo here in the country.
I know.
Isiolo, Marsabit, Moyale.
Yes.
We have 3 others, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, which are Somalis. And you know, if we now go into Ethiopia,
Somalia and so on and so forth.
And Somalia and the rest of it, how about if they start paying us in kind?
Let me tell you this.
Yes.
First, it never pays to interfere in the internal affairs of another country.
Yeah.
It's best to have bilateral relationship.
Yes.
You may not love each other,
but
God perhaps has placed you as neighbors, and you can do. But history has shown, this is the worst.
Yes.
History has shown that if you interfere in the internal affairs of another country by using sections and segments of that country,
yours also will eventually.
You'll get into bigger problems. Look at America, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan.
Yes.
It never works.
Look at Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire.
That you get look at Libya.
Yes.
You get a group. Look at Iraq. You get a group within a country and work with them to help you mess the
look at Iran. Look at Iran now. Iran has been messing Syria.
It can't work. It has never worked.
Now it has got its own issues.
In the history of the world, these things they used to work in the ancient world, where once you took over, it was in the most brutal of manner, where you could even kill everybody.
Yes.
But in the kind of world today where you can't slaughter people, you are not going to have a foothold in Somalia by supporting Puntland or
Jubaland.
It's not in your interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finally.
But you can help them with their problems.
Finally.
Tell them you are my brothers, we are neighbors, work better.
Finally, we're running out of time.
Yes.
Our economy. What do you have to say about the economy?
The economy is not doing well. The economy is actually in the ICU.
Oh, it's in ICU.
Yeah, we can only say this.
Not even in
no,
HDU.
no,
Yeah.
not HDU. We are in ICU. I'm telling you. If you walk in Nairobi, you know you rich people you don't know.
I am not rich.
The economy is doing so badly. I go a lot to the village. If you went to the village,
Yes.
then you will not come back to Nairobi
Yes.
and speak. You'll just go back to your house and keep quiet and say, we are gone.
People are
The
suffering.
level of poverty in the villages in this country.
Yes.
The level of poverty in Nairobi and the poorer parts of Nairobi.
Yes.
If you go to Kibera and the rest of the River Road in Nairobi, those people doing small businesses, no wonder the Uhuru is not very popular with them. The economy is doing bad. But unlike David Ndii, who is very pessimistic, I am a little hopeful. I believe there is something we can do. You know why? Our problems are born out of cheap maneuvers. You know, cheap maneuvers, raw theft, wastage that is obvious, anybody, a kid can see. In other words, if the president says, let's put a stop to this, let's be serious, no more stealing from government, no more funding. But as it were today, they are forcing counties to pay debts. And some of the counties are saying we are paying for things we can't even see. How a governor, how do I pay for a bridge that's non-existent? Not even a bad one. And the government is now forcing them.
But who are the ones who have approved that all the way to the final certificate and say this is 100%?
Sometimes.
And if it's done corruptly, why not go and arrest all those people?
That's what I say.
If we were seeing 20, 30 engineers, surveyors, planners, and the rest of them put in jail because of this and that, these are ghost projects, then the people will say, oh, that's how it is.
But you remember what I'm saying?
But right now, nobody's showing.
What I was saying finally.
And the genuine people who have done genuine work out there who cannot get their money because they supported the previous governor and the new governor is victimizing them.
Or because they are mixed with the bad ones.
Yes.
So we should sort out.
Yes.
But the government is asking governors to pay without sorting out.
No. The government, they see the issue.
And I don't agree with that.
No. The issue is that they're not saying they pay for the ghost projects.
Yes.
They're saying pay for the genuine ones. The ones who have issues, bring it back to us and tell us this is a ghost one. You see what I mean? It's not a big deal.
I don't think that's how the government is doing it. Government is asking them, you in your county have 600 million, pay. Governors are saying, let's sort out these things.
They have taken 3 years to sort them out. This is the third year
sometimes it's beyond the reach of governors. First, when new governors came, they tried to reduce all bills by auditing them. Secondly, central government, national government came in and said, okay, we also want to audit. Some of those cases are not yet over in terms of auditing.
So the legacy of Uhuru, as far as you're concerned, it can only come from BBI. There's nothing fundamental in terms of development.
I'm only hoping
universal health care,
that's out.
Industrialization.
I'm only hoping that Uhuru will handle this
housing,
BBI thing honestly, intelligently,
and use that now
diligently,
as yes.
And without having many cars under the guard, without betraying Raila, so that the two of them and all other leaders move this country forward, solve the politics, and hopefully, naturally, the economy will move forward. That's my thinking.
Professor Herman Manyora, you know that with all the intellectual disposition and the experience you have and kind of issues that need to be addressed in this country for purposes of informing, educating Kenyans. You don't need 1 hour is far too little, short period of time for us to exhaust many things. But I hope the next time we will continue from where we have left right now. For now, we have come to the end of our time, and I want to appreciate